All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to be hopping into Fizban's Treasury of Dragons to look at one of the new 2 subclasses. And by new, I mean actually released subclasses, which is the Way of the Ascendant Dragon Monk. Now, quick reminder, first things first, if you enjoy these videos, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All of those things let Google know that other people should see this. If you don't do that, no one else will see it. As much as I love being the best kept secret on YouTube, I would much rather be the worst kept secret on YouTube. Another reminder, in honor of Fizban's Treasury of Dragons coming out, I did release a new subclass for my dragon-themed class, the Dragon Knights. Links for both the base class and the subclass are in the description down below. Definitely check it out. They're pay what you want, so you can get them for free. If you think I do good stuff and you'd like to give me something, you are more than welcome to pay whatever you feel they are worth. So, that being said, let's dive into this. Now, quick refresher on 5th edition class design. In 5th edition D&D, every class is designed to play very, very differently right from the beginning. In order to do that, each class has these things that we call defining features. Defining features are either abilities or features that are unique to the class, or aren't unique but they get them earlier than other classes, or they can use them in a different way, things like that. So what are the defining features of the monk, my personal favorite class? Well, they have 2 kind of more minor ones, and by minor I mean they really don't get brought up again, other than the fact that unarmored movement keeps getting faster. And those are unarmored defense and unarmored movement. Unarmored defense basically just means the AC of the monk when they're not wearing armor is equal to 10 plus their dex plus their wisdom. So monks don't have to wear armor, and by having both of those up, it means that they can still have a decent AC. Unarmored movement, basically, when you're not wearing armor, your movement speed is increased. Monks are hyper mobile. At max level, they can go up to 60 feet per turn without using a dash or anything. Their base speed turns into 60 feet if your base speed is 30. They get an additional 30 feet of movement. Now, the 2 other defining features that actually do kind of make up a big difference. The first one is martial arts. Effectively, normally if you make an unarmed strike, it is strength-based, and you do 1 plus your strength modifier damage. There is no rolling. For a monk, their unarmed strikes can be dex-based. They actually have a thing called the martial arts die that gets bigger as the class levels up. Starts at a D4, goes all the way up to a D10. Basically, their unarmed strikes, they can use dexterity for them. They get more powerful, and if they use the attack action and attack with either a monk weapon, which are a subset of weapons that also use the martial art dice for damage and can work just like an unarmed strike, they can use their bonus action to make 1 unarmed strike for free. So, yeah, that kind of is where most of the monk's abilities come from. They generally have to be done through unarmed strikes, and right from first level, they effectively can dual wield their fists, which no other class can do that. At second level, they get Ki, which is their limited resource. They have as many Ki points as they have levels of Monk. And Ki starts off with 3 things you can use for it. You have Step of the Wind, which lets you effectively dash or disengage as a bonus action. You have Patient Defense, which lets you take the dodge action as a bonus action, and then you have Flurry of Blows, which lets you take 2 attacks on your bonus action instead of 1 if you took the attack action. So that's really what the monk is built around. It's built around this hypermobility and key points being able to fuel other abilities. Now, one thing that doesn't count as a defining feature, because you get it much little later, but is very descriptive of how the monk is designed to play, is the Stunning Strike ability. Basically, anytime you hit with an unarmed strike or a hit with a monk weapon, you can burn a key point, make them make a con save, and if they fail, they're stunned until the end of your next turn. And that's really where the monk comes into play. The monk is not a damage-dealing class. It is a control-based class. Everything it does is designed to control the action economy of 5th edition. Taking away actions from enemies, giving allies more actions or more effective actions. And that can really be summarized with things like Stunning Strike and Patient Defense. Patient Defense effectively makes the enemy waste their attacks attacking the monk because they make them with disadvantage, so they have a much less chance of being able to hit. Stunning Strike removes them from combat for a round, so they don't get to take any of their actions, and it helps all your allies because all attacks against them have advantage. So that's really what you want to focus on when you are playing the monk, is you are not going to be a top-of-the-line damage dealer, but you might be able to win or lose the fight for your team simply by how you use your key points, how you position your monk, and how you use the special abilities of your subclass. So, going into the Way of the Ascendant Dragon, this is a class that I've already covered here. You can actually find the Way of the Ascendant Dragon Monk Unearthed Arcana version in this channel. If you want to watch that, you'll be able to kind of tell the difference between the two. My first opinion of the Way of the Ascendant Dragon was it was just a broken class. It effectively tried to turn the monk into a damage-dealing class that could do damage on par with like a fighter or a rogue or something like that. But because the class is not designed to play that way, they overcompensated and just made it do this unbelievably large amount of damage. And in order to use this subclass effectively, you would basically just throw away the entirety of the base class. You would almost never use anything in the base class. You would exclusively use things in the subclass, and nothing really kind of fit together with anything else. A good subclass should reinforce and should synergize with the base class, so that you feel like a more powerful version of that class, not a completely different class. How does the officially printed one deal with that? Well, let's look into it. So, starting at 3rd level, you actually get 2 different abilities. The first one is called Draconic Disciple. You gain the following benefits. You gain Draconic Presence, which is if you fail a Charisma Intimidation or a Charisma Persuasion check, you can use your reaction to re-roll the check as you tap into the mighty presence of dragons. Once this feature turns a failure into a success, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. Draconic Strike, when you damage a target with an unarmed strike, you can change the damage type to Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Poison, basically dragon elemental types. And then finally, Tongue of the Dragon, you learn to speak, read, and write Draconic, or one other language of your choice. So these make sense, to be perfectly honest. The Draconic Presence one is the one that I think is most interesting, simply because it has built into it that you can't waste it. So literally, anytime you fail an intimidation or persuasion check, even if there's almost no chance you can make it, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and try your Draconic Presence. It's not limited, other than the fact that you only get to turn a failure into a success once per day. So it is a one and done ability. But because if you fail at it, you can do it again and again and again until you succeed, it feels a lot better as a one and done ability. Now, this is one of those things where you do need to think, okay, do I think that this particular check is important enough for me to turn it into a success? Like if you're just haggling for 10 silver off a potion or something like that, or getting 2 gold off of your rations order, maybe don't worry about this. But if it's in one of those situations where you really, really need the NPC to react the way you want them to, then yeah, go for it. So yeah, that's the only real thing that you have to worry about with Draconic Presence is, while yes, it doesn't hurt you to fail, it theoretically can hurt you to succeed because you won't be able to use it for a day. But other than that, I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. The other thing that you get at 3rd level is called Breath of the Dragon. And this is where the old one got broken. And it got broken right at the 3rd level. So they did change it a little bit. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace one of the attacks with an exhalation of draconic energy in either a 20-foot cone or a 30-foot line that is 5 feet wide. Your choice. Choose a damage type: acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison. We are just going to call those dragon elements going forward. So choose a damage type, dragon elements. Each creature in that area must make a dex save against your key save DC, taking damage of the chosen type equal to 2 rolls of your martial arts die on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful. At 11th level, the damage of the feature increases to 3 rolls of your martial arts die. You use this feature number times equal to your proficiency bonus. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. While you have no uses available, you can spend 2 key points to use this feature again. So, I'm still not 100% sold on this ability, but it's better than it was. Now, I actually reread the Unearthed Arcana version of this before doing the video when I was doing the research portion of it, but that was a couple days ago. So if I'm misremembering, forgive me. But from what I remember, I do know it used to be 1 key point instead of 2 to use it again. And I can't remember if you got the quote-unquote free uses in there. But turning it into a 2 key point ability instead of a 1 key point ability does help a bit. When you're looking at action or kick economy, if you take the attack action at 3rd level, you have 1 attack. Now, this is limited to only the attacks you make with your attack action. Meaning if you make an unarmed strike, and I don't think that was in the original one. So in the original one, you could literally replace all 4 of your attacks if you flurried of blows with this Breath of the Dragon. This, the maximum you can ever do is 2 in a turn. It's basically going to do twice as much damage as you would normally do, but you're not going to get your dexterity modifier added to the damage. It's just the dice. The other thing with this is because it's a saving throw instead of an attack roll, this can never crit, whereas your punches and things like that can hit or crit. And on a crit, you would actually be doing more damage to a single target than you would with Breath of the Dragon. The big advantage of this is it does area damage. And it does give you a nice kind of choice between. Now, the one thing I don't quite get about this is why they made it a 20-foot cone instead of a 15-foot cone. Just because 20-foot cone is a weird size in 5th edition to D&D. It's generally either 15 or 30. They don't tend to do a lot of 20-foot cones. So I thought that was a little bit weird. But other than that, it's not bad. Being able to choose between the 2 different shapes, the cone or the line, is nice. It means that you're not going to be quite as limited when you're using this. If it was always a cone and you're fighting with other people, you might have to really position yourself to get it to where you're not hitting your allies with it. But having that choice is nice. And it also does mean that I'm still a little bit torn on it, simply because you get you can use it for free a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. It does mean when you get to high levels, like once you get to 10 or 11, this turns into something that you're using almost all the time. And because by the time, I'm going to try this one more time. By the time you get to 10th level, you have a proficiency bonus of 4, and your martial arts die is a d6. Once you get to 11, it turns into a d8. So we're going to go with 11 right now. With this, you can use it 4 times without burning any ki. You still have 10 ki points. And as long as you're hitting multiple targets, you are completely out damaging anything a monk could do without that. Now, it does mean that you can't use Stunning Strike. You can't use any time you're using Breath of the Dragon after you get through those proficiency bonus ones. You have to choose, okay, is it going to be more useful for me to do Stunning Strike? Is it going to be more useful for me to do extra damage? So yeah, this is something I need to see played. I like the fact that they turned it into 2 key points instead of 1 key point, because it was just, when it only cost 1 key point, there was really no choice. It was always better for you to be doing Breath of the Dragon than it was for you to be doing unarmed strikes, unless you were trying to stun something. And the amount of extra damage you were able to do for 1 key point was just too high. Doubling it to 2 key points makes this a little bit more limited, but it still feels a little bit odd for a monk. As we go through the class, hopefully, we'll have some other things that make it a little bit better monk-wise. So, all right. So, 6th level, we get Wings Unfurled. When you use your Step of the Wind, you can unfurl spectral draconic wings from your back that vanish at the end of your turn. While the wings exist, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed. You use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So this one's even more interesting because it doesn't give you the option to use key points to use it again. So this one is a little bit more limited. And I think it's cool. First things first, Step of the Wind is probably the least used ability of most monk abilities. And the reason for that is because monks are already hypermobile, you do eventually get diminishing returns on mobility. Getting 60 feet per turn, you generally aren't going to need much more than 60 feet ever in a fight. It's just, battlefields just aren't that big. And because monks can run on walls and the things like that, it's remarkably difficult to get to a place where a monk can't get to you. Especially once you start dealing with monks like shadow monks where they can teleport and things like that. So, Step of the Wind is just really underutilized, and this gives you such an interesting way to use it. Now, because Step of the Wind takes your bonus action and it takes a key point, this again does give you choices as far as, okay, well, if I Step of the Wind, that means I'm not going to be able to get my bonus action punch, I'm not going to be able to flurry of blows or patient defense, but you can fly. And that really, really changes things and really adds to the hypermobility that the monk is built around. Because now, not only can you really go anywhere you want, because you've effectively doubled your movement speed and gained a flying speed, but you can go over enemies. One of the things that can hurt monks is in order to get to the target that they want, they have to run through the bad guys. And sometimes that can mean taking a bunch of opportunity attacks. Wings Unfurled gets rid of that limitation where you can just whoop. The other thing that's kind of interesting about it, because the wings vanish at the end of your turn, it means that maximum you can fly 180 feet. Theoretically, on your next turn you can do it again, but you have to have a place to rest between the turns in order to activate it again. Otherwise you fall, and falling is always fun. So that's something that you do want to be aware of if you're using this outside of combat, which I could definitely see using it outside of combat to get over large gaps, or a lot of different things. There's just a lot of different uses for a flying speed. So yeah, overall, I just, it's a cool ability. It definitely feeds into the hypermobility aspect of the monk. If you are still playing the monk as that control expert, this can really help you to kind of laser focus your abilities and your attacks so that they hit the exact targets you want. If we go back to Breath of the Dragon, again with a 20-foot cone, that means if you go 20 feet in the air and just shoot it down, that effectively means you do a 20-foot in diameter circle on the ground. So because you have that cone aspect, you can use this to kind of change the shape of the thing that you are, of the ability that you're using. And it would just look really, really cool to just sprout some rings, go up, and just go whoa to the ground. So that I like. I think it's really interesting. There's also some gorgeous artwork of a human dragon monk. And it's, pick up the book. It is by far, just the artwork in this book is just insane. My plan is to use that for the thumbnail. So check out the thumbnail for this video if you want to see the artwork I'm talking about. All right. At 11th level, you get Aspect of the Wyrm. Now, this is the biggest change from the base class, or the Unearthed Arcana class. The Unearthed Arcana class, this Aspect of the Wyrm, was basically just additional damage, and this is where the class became super, super broken, because it just kept giving you more damage as you did anytime you attacked. This has changed things pretty big, and I think in a much, much more monk-like way for 5th edition. So, as a bonus action, you can create an aura of draconic power that radiates 10 feet from you for 1 minute. For the duration, you gain one of the following effects of your choice. There are two different things. I'm going to start with the second one first, because the second one is either identical or very similar to the Unearthed Arcana. So the second one is called Resistance. Choose a damage type. When you activate this aura, Acid, Cold, Dragon Elements, you and your allies within the aura have resistance to that damage. This is a very control aspect thing to do, because getting resistance to a damage type, especially if you're fighting a dragon that uses that damage type, like a red dragon is either going to do just regular damage, bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage, or is going to do fire damage. It's extremely rare for a dragon to have multiple damage types it can do. So if you're up against a red dragon, giving your entire team resistance from fire damage is really good. Now, they only have resistance while they're within 10 feet of you, but it's still a 20-foot diameter circle. So it's still pretty good. So yeah, resistance can be very, very useful. You have to know your enemy pretty well. The second one, which is very different, again, the Unearthed Arcana one was just you get additional damage added to your attacks, and because of that, you were never going to use resistance. You were always going to use the extra damage. This one, however, is called Frightful Presence. When you create this aura, and as a bonus action on subsequent turns, you can choose a creature within the aura target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your key save DC or become frightened of you for 1 minute. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a successful save. So, first things first, this is actually a reference to dragons. Dragons have an ability called Frightful Presence. It is a super useful ability, and it's one of the reasons that paladins are so good at fighting dragons, because paladins become immune to the frightened condition and get an aura that prevents their friends from being frightened. Frightened is a really useful thing. Basically, the frightened condition, a frightened creature has disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls while the source of its fear is within line of sight, and the creature can't willingly move closer to the source of its fear. So, from a control aspect, giving them disadvantage on all their attack rolls and ability checks is really useful. Making it so that they can't move towards you is another thing that's really useful. You can use this to effectively make a monk buffer, where you move so that in order for an enemy to get to one of your allies, they have to move closer to you, which they can't if they are frightened. Giving them disadvantage on all their attack rolls means they're going to be missing a lot, meaning they're going to be wasting their actions a lot more, which turns into action economy manipulation. I really love this. I love the fact that they're taking Frightful Presence and turning it into ability. I think that is such an iconic aspect of dragons that not having it as part of a class based on dragons doesn't feel right. And second of all, it's such a good monk ability. Now again, it takes your bonus action, so you do have to choose: do I want to flurry of blows? Do I want to do an extra punch? Do I want to? There's so many. The monk itself is extremely dependent on their bonus action. They use bonus actions for almost everything. But this is a viable thing to use your bonus action for, especially since if a target makes it save and ends the effect after it's already been frightened, it does it at the end of its turn. And when it comes back to you, you can choose to frighten them again. You can choose to frighten a different creature. There isn't a limit to the number of creatures you can frighten with this. It lasts for a minute, so that's to 10 rounds. So every turn, you can frighten a different creature. Or if you just have one that you really need to keep frightened, anytime they make their save, you can just frighten them again. So yeah, there's just a lot you can use with Frightful Presence. There's a lot you can use with Resistance. Neither one is going to be massively overpowered. The last part of this ability, once you create this aura, you can't create it again until you finish a long rest, unless you expend 3 key points to create it again, which does make sense. The abilities that this gives you, it makes sense for it to be a pseudo one and done ability. And again, by 11th level, you have 11 key points. Using 3 to use this again, and you get your key points back on a short rest. So using 3 to get this ability back is not that huge an investment, and it has a lot of things that will benefit it. So yeah, overall, I really like Aspect of the Wyrm. Finally, at 17th level, you get Ascendant Aspect. You gain the following benefits. When you use your Breath of the Dragon, you can spend 1 key point to augment its shape and power. The exhalation of draconic energy becomes either a 60-foot cone or a 90-foot line that is 5 foot wide, and each creature in that area takes damage equal to 4 rolls of your martial arts die on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. So for Augment Breath, you can burn a key point when you do it. Now, again, you have, at 17th level, you'll have 6 uses of it. On the 7th use, it's already costing you 2 key points. So this would turn it into a 3 key point technique. And it makes it bigger and does more damage. Now again, if you combine this with that flight ability, you again can go up and do a 60-foot diameter circle. If you can get 60 feet high, and do it that way. Obviously, the 90-foot line is exactly that. Again, this is designed to be a damage-dealing ability, which can be an action economy controlled kind of thing. Again, tying this to a key point use, I think is good. It should be something that costs some key points because you're using a lot. You're doing a lot of the damage here. Yeah. The next benefit you get is called Blind Sight. Pretty standard. You gain Blind Sight up to 10 feet. And it just talks about Blind Sight. Now, this is another thing that they changed from the base class. In the base class, or the Unearthed Arcana version, you got it up to 30 feet, which was a little bit broken. Because Blind Sight is really, really useful. There's very few things that can fool Blind Sight. So having it out to 30 feet was a bit overpowered. 10 feet makes perfect sense and can be really, really useful. Especially by 17th level, you're dealing with invisible enemies and, fighting in bad situations where they'll put clouds that prevent you from seeing things and stuff. Like, there's a lot of good reasons to have a Blind Sight. And then finally, Explosive Fury. When you activate your aspect of the Wyrm, Draconic Fury explodes from you. Choose any number of creatures you can see in your aura. Each of those creatures must succeed on a dex save against your key save DC or take 3d10 acid, cold, fire, dragon elements. Your choice. So, this takes that aspect of the Wyrm and adds a damage aspect to it. Now, again, if I remember correctly, the old aspect of the Wyrm, you had a lot more uses of it in the Unearthed Arcana one, and that's why I felt that this was just really, really broken. With it being a pseudo one-and-done ability, this makes this just another reason that it's useful. It does say you can choose any number of creatures you can see in your aura, so you don't have to worry about this hurting your allies, which, especially if you're using the resistance thing, would really suck to activate resistance and then hit them with Explosive Fury at the same time. So this is only going to affect... it's only going to affect the bad guys. The other thing about this is they only take damage on a failure, which normally would kind of suck, but... Aspect of the Wyrm already has other things that it does for you. So this is just this little bit of extra stuff that's useful for you. So, yeah. Final thoughts. Overall, this is much, much better than the Unearthed Arcana one. Again, the Unearthed Arcana one tried to turn the monk into just a damage-dealing class, and it just didn't do it well. It took away a lot of the choices of the class to the point where anytime you weren't using Breath of the Dragon on almost every attack, and then using Aspect of the Wyrm and all these other things that would just keep giving you more and more damage, you were doing yourself a disservice. And so, again, you could literally just throw the base class away and never look at it. This, however, works with the base class a lot better. Breath of the Dragon, again, I'm still not 100% sold on it, but it's better than it used to be. I would really need to see this played before I could make a final judgment on if I would want to nerf it in some way, shape, or form. Like, part of me wants to go, instead of giving you 2 rolls of your martial arts die base, have it 1 roll, and then at 11th level turn it into 2 rolls instead of 3. Just so that there still is a reason to do regular punches every so often, other than you don't want to, use some of your uses of it. Wings Unfurled, like I said, I think is super, super cool. And when you combine it with Breath of the Dragon and everything else in the class, can turn this into a really interesting monk to play. Aspect of the Wyrm is awesome. Specifically, I think Frightful Presence is probably the most fun ability, especially describing how you create the Frightful Presence. Like, for dragons, they literally just send out this wave of terror from them. And you can just go, I send out a wave of terror. Or you could go, I sit there and and fire goes out of my mouth. Or, just become really creative with how you create the Frightful Presence. I think that would be really cool. And then Ascendant Aspect. again, being a 17th level ability, it should be really powerful, and it is for the most part. Yeah, overall, I like the class. It's interesting that this is a much more damage focused class than most other monk subclasses. But it still has the control aspects that are really definitive of the monk in 5th edition. And I think that's where the Unearthed Arcana version of this fell short really bad, because they just completely threw away the aspects of control to go, no, we do lots of damage. And yeah, the turning the monk entirely into a damage dealer without creating just a brand new class just doesn't work. That's not how the monk is designed to be played in 5th edition. So, yeah. Otherwise, that is going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this, remember, like, subscribe, turn notifications on in the comments down below. What are your opinions of this particular class? Do you like the Breath of the Dragon? Would you rather see something a little bit more along the control aspect? Or do you agree with me that maybe they should dial down the damage just a little bit, because you can hit multiple targets with it? Let me know those thoughts in the comments down below. Also, what's your favorite dragon? Color, metal, gem? Let me know that in the comments down below. And the specific one, like, is it red dragons? Is it copper dragons? Is it moonstone dragons? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that is all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.